and welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your weekly dose of the top pro-life news and issues, all from a Catholic perspective. I'm Catherine Hadro in our Washington, D.C. studio. Thanks for joining us. In this week's show,
I am a man with Down syndrome, and my life is worth living.
His Capitol Hill testimony went viral, and now Frank Stevens joins us in studio. Priests working in the slums of Argentina announced the creation of a new pro-life pregnancy center. And this.
Undergirding Humanae Vitae is the sense that married couples have turned away from God's plan for marriage.
This week marks 50 years since the release of Humanae Vitae. We tell you how one diocese is sharing its good news in a creative way. But first, our top story. We're just days away now from July 31st, when the public comment period for the pro-life Protect Life rule will come to an end. The Protect Life rule stops Title X family planning dollars from going to abortion groups like Planned Parenthood. That means, if finalized, Planned Parenthood will lose up to $60 million of our tax dollars each year, their second largest source of tax funding. President Donald Trump recently issued the Protect Life rule, but it must first undergo a 60-day public comment period. The deadline to comment is July 31st. Stay tuned and we'll tell you how you can do that and submit a public comment. But on Capitol Hill, Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers has been supporting this pro-life proposal. I spoke with her recently about that and more. Here's our interview. Congresswoman, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
First off, we are quickly approaching the July 31st public comment period deadline for the Protect Life rule. This is a rule you have supported. Congresswoman, tell us why.
Yes, I do support the Protect Life rule. I was pleased to see the president take this action regarding Title X funding. What we're talking about are taxpayer dollars that are used to help support preventative services for women across this country. What this rule will do is ensure that taxpayer dollars only go for the intended purpose and not be used for abortions.
How do you respond then, Congresswoman, to abortion lobbyist talking points claiming the Protect Life rule is a gag rule and it would jeopardize the health of women in the United States?
It is the law of the land that taxpayer dollars are not to be used for abortion. And what this rule simply does is ensure that the taxpayer dollars will only go for the intended purpose and not be diverted for other purposes.
I want to turn now to another important story on Capitol Hill, the pending Senate confirmation hearings for Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. Why are you, Congresswoman, encouraging the Senate to confirm Kavanaugh? And why is this something our pro-life viewers should be following closely?
Well, this is a very important decision, who's on the Supreme Court. I'm really excited about Judge Kavanaugh. First of all, he has a tremendous record and experience that he will bring to the Supreme Court. But most of all, I'm excited about having someone on the Supreme Court that recognizes and will respect the Constitution and will protect individual rights, individual freedoms. And so for anyone who believes that that is important and is fundamental to our country, we need to make sure that we are supporting Judge Kavanaugh.
Finally, Congresswoman, you are the highest-ranking Republican woman in Congress, and you are outspoken about your pro-life views. Can you explain how did becoming a wife and mother play a role in your pro-life beliefs?
Yes, I've been pro-life for a long time, and I believe that every life should be celebrated and cherished. I was single when I was first elected to Congress, and then I got married and became a mom, and it's been the greatest blessing in my life. And I'm grateful today to have 3 young kids. They are the joy every day in my life. Now, our oldest, Cole, he's now 11 years old. He was born with that extra 21st chromosome that most people know is Down syndrome. And it isn't what we had imagined. It isn't what Brian and I ever thought that we would experience. But he teaches me and he reminds me every day of the value of every life. And part of my role here on Capitol Hill and serving in Congress is to be a warrior for human life and human dignity. And for many others that I have the honor of representing in Eastern Washington that share that view, we're going to be coming together on August 1st in Spokane Valley and having a rally to highlight the importance of celebrating life and making sure that our voices are being heard, because You know, sometimes the media doesn't cover that story as much as I would like them to.
Thank you for that witness, especially because we know so many unborn who are diagnosed with Down syndrome are targeted in the womb.
Yes, it really breaks my heart when you look at the numbers of those babies that when there's a prenatal diagnosis, that the decision is made to abort. And we even have some countries like Iceland that is celebrating no kids with, or no people with Down syndrome. Denmark has launched a campaign. You know, we need to change our view here. We need to celebrate what every person has to offer, and even celebrate the dignity of every life, and not focus on the disability. Focus on their ability. Let's celebrate what every person, no matter what their circumstances may be, can offer in this world.
Thank you for sharing your family's witness with us, Representative Cathy McMorris Rodgers, Chair of the House Republican Conference.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again to the Congresswoman. We are going to have another discussion a bit later in the show all about what the Congresswoman just hit on, the gift that people with Down syndrome offer our world. But first, for pro-life reaction and analysis, we are joined now by Mallory Quigley, the Vice President of Communications for the Susan B. Anthony List. Mallory, welcome back.
Great to be with you.
You just heard what Representative McMorris Rodgers said, and she hit on the devastating abortion rates for babies diagnosed with Down syndrome. Now, it seems like a ban on this kind of discrimination should receive wide support, but Planned Parenthood is pushing back on it.
Right. Well, you know, we did some research with the Lejeune Foundation, which I think viewers will be familiar with, a few years ago with the Charlotte Lozier Institute, and they found the immense joy that people with Down syndrome bring to their families, to their communities, and certainly we don't even dream about harming or eliminating people with Down syndrome or any special need, you know, after they're out of the womb. But Planned Parenthood is advocating just deadly discrimination towards these children in the womb.
Which brings me to my next question. The Protect Life rule would cut off Planned Parenthood from Title $10, and the comment period is coming up July 31st. So what role can our viewers and pro-lifers really have in finalizing this pro-life rule?
Absolutely. So, of course, the Protect Life rule, this is President Trump's initiative to return to those Reagan-era regulations, stopping Planned Parenthood from receiving more than $60 million in taxpayer funding. This, of course, is money that they're using to pay rent, to do community advertising. Almost 100,000 comments have been submitted to HHS so far, and we need absolutely every single pro-lifer to submit their comment to HHS so that the administration not only feels the support but actually sees it, the support for this new regulation. The other side, they have everything to lose, and there's been an incredible level of organization. Just today I've gotten several emails from Planned Parenthood and NARAL advocating for pro-abortion advocates to send their comments. So we have to hear from everyone.
And we'll tell our viewers exactly how they can do that in just a bit. But I know there's another big date that you have your eye on, August 2nd, which is the date for Tennessee's gubernatorial race. I know SBA President Marjorie was just with Representative Diane Black, who's running. What should our viewers know about this race?
Yes, well, this is an incredibly important race. Congressman Diane Black is the go-to leader that we seek out in the House when we need pro-life legislation to be championed by someone. The pro-life cause is so much at the heart of her. This is how Congressman Black got her start in politics in the state of Tennessee. So to send her back to Tennessee as the governor, where she can help usher in a new era of protections for pro-life for unborn children, it will be incredible. We just need everyone in the state of Tennessee to get out and support her.
And ahead of every big race, SBA, the Susan B. Anthony List, always has a big field game. The New York Times even recently highlighted this, recently, the ground game there. Why is that face-to-face and going door-to-door, why is that so important when we can reach people on social media and through television?
Sure, and of course, you know, no one knew better than Mother Angelica the power of reaching people through television and media, but I think that face-to-face conversation is so important, especially as we've become just saturated with entertainment and media coming at us every day on our phones, on our televisions, on our radios. So what we do with our canvassing operation is to meet voters at their door, talk to them, have a one-on-one conversation.
And to have that dialogue.
Absolutely. It's so important.
So valuable. Mallory Quigley, Vice President of Communications for the Susan B. Anthony List. Thanks for being here.
Always.
President Donald Trump recently issued the Protect Life Rule, which stops Title X family planning dollars from going to abortion groups like Planned Parenthood. In fact, Planned Parenthood stands to lose as much as $60 million of our tax dollars each year, thanks to this new rule, their second largest source of funding. But here's the deal. Before the Protect Life Rule can go into effect, it must undergo a 60-day public comment period. That July 31st deadline is quickly approaching, just days away. So, pro-lifers, this is where you come in. Listen up for this week's very important call to action. We need you to voice your support for the Protect Life Rule and submit a public comment. Here's how you can do that. Open up your internet browser and type in prolifeweekly.com. At this website, you can flood the Department of Health and Human Services with comments to support President Trump's life-saving new regulation. We've made it easy for you and have already crafted a comment for you to submit. If you'd like, though, you can, of course, add your own thoughts to personalize the comment. Once you get to prolifeweekly.com, simply enter in some basic personal information. You'll then be brought to the prepared comment, and you just have to click Submit. Your message will then go straight to the HHS department. The public comment period deadline for the Pro-Life Protect Life Rule is July 31st. It's almost here. Before we reach this important deadline, submit your comment in support of President Trump's Protect Life Rule by going to prolifeweekly.com. We go now to pro-life headlines from around the globe. With the support of at least 4 bishops, priests working in the slums of Buenos Aires, Argentina, announced a new pro-life pregnancy care center initiative to be called a Home of the Mother Embrace. The home will welcome young women with at-risk pregnancies who are abandoned and may be tempted to abort. This comes as Argentina's Senate debates legalizing abortion. Pro-abortion pressure is also at play in the UK. More than 170 politicians from political parties in Britain, Ireland, and Northern Ireland sent a letter to the Sunday Times urging the repeal of Northern Ireland's protection of the unborn. While Ireland voted to repeal its 8th Amendment protecting the unborn, it does not affect Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom. Also in the UK, a British charity that provides women with alternatives to abortion was kicked out from a London fair after a local government official said the group misrepresented itself in its booth application. The pro-life group Life showcased information about fetal development and support for women in unexpected pregnancies at a London fair booth. But when volunteers and staff arrived the next morning, they say their stall was dismantled and their property was removed. Event organizers say the decision was made by the local government body sponsoring the event. One man's testimony on Capitol Hill last year captured the attention of lawmakers and then online viewers after his speech went viral. Take a look.
Let me say that I am not a research scientist. However, no one knows more about life with Down syndrome than I do. Whatever you learn today, please remember this. I am a man with Down syndrome, and my life is worth living.
That's Frank Stevens calling for more scientific research on behalf of people with Down syndrome. We recently welcomed him in our studio along with the president of the Global Down Syndrome Foundation to continue this important conversation. We are joined now by Frank Stevens, the Quincy Jones advocate for Global Down Syndrome Foundation and a board member for Special Olympics Virginia, and Michelle Sie Whitten, the president, CEO, and co-founder of the Global Down Syndrome Foundation. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
It's so good to be with you both. Frank, your testimony on Capitol Hill last year just went viral. It was everywhere. What was your message to Congress?
First and foremost, I'd like to say I am a man with Down syndrome, and my life is worth living.
Absolutely.
We're here to fund research on behalf of Global Down Syndrome Foundation. My chromosomes are a medical blueprint into issues like soft tissue cancer, immune system disorders, heart disease, and Alzheimer's disease.
There's so much potential for discovery there. Michelle, in your work, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions facing people with Down syndrome today?
Wow, there are so many, I suppose, and it depends what country you're in. In many countries, there's this misconception that their life isn't worth living and that they can't do anything, read, write, speak, go to school. In the United States, of course, we're more advanced, but there's still a lot of misconceptions. I think that there is this misconception that people with Down syndrome can't go to public school and keep on track. And with modification, they can keep on track and they could have very similar school experiences. I think the other notion is that people with Down syndrome, are different in their desires or their outlooks. And knowing a lot of people with Down syndrome, I would say they are exactly the same in their dispositions, their the spectrum of things that they want to do or are able to do. It's just very similar to a typical person. But I think the challenge that we have at the Global Down Syndrome Foundation is really the lack of education on how to provide good medical care to people with Down syndrome. And if you don't have good medical care, you really can't reach your potential.
That's such a good point. What more is your group doing, Global Down Syndrome Foundation, to change those misconceptions that you were discussing and to change the way people view people with Down syndrome?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we actually work and participate in a lot of activities with people with Down syndrome. And Frank, you're a superstar. I mean, there's a whole spectrum, within the typical population and people with Down syndrome, and we bring the whole spectrum. So I think meeting a person with Down syndrome really immediately changes most people's perception. I think that's a great thing.
So Frank, in getting to know you more, what are some of your interests and hobbies? What does your typical day look like?
Well, besides being on the road speaking, I enjoy basketball and golf. I love acting.
Really? You're involved in theater, aren't you?
I am.
That's wonderful. That's
He's been in a movie or two, right?
Yes.
That's incredible. You have all these beautiful skills. Michelle, there was a few months ago, Iceland was just touting the fact that they've nearly eradicated Down syndrome. And of course that was done by aborting babies who were prenatally diagnosed with Down syndrome. What is your reaction to that story and to the fact that that's happening?
Yeah, I think for the Global Down Syndrome Foundation, we're not pro-choice, we're not pro-life, we're pro-information. But when the government or medical professionals get involved in what we consider a coercive manner, then it's not a choice at all, and it's not proper information at all. When you're being told, like I was told when I was pregnant, that my baby would die by 3 and that I should terminate because the baby's not going to live very long. So to me, that's incorrect, coercive information. And I think the same thing could be happening in Iceland based on the documentary. In Denmark, they called for a Down syndrome-free Denmark by 2030. So this talk is, I think, imbued with eugenics and a lot of terrible kind of manifestations of maybe the 1940s in the US in terms of the eugenics movement. So I think humane people would fight that. And I think what we can't do is just say they're evil, terrible people. What we have to say is we need to educate them and show them what the lifespan is, what the life quality can be. And that's where we go back to medical care and research. And we really do need at least the basic amount of support that a person with Fragile X or autism or other developmental disabilities, or somebody with muscular dystrophy, or somebody with any kind of disease or condition. And I just feel like there is a lot of discrimination on the Hill, against Down syndrome in particular, because we're the poster child of kind of prenatal testing. And I don't know how that happened because there are other prenatally diagnosed diseases and conditions, but that's where we're at. That's what we're fighting. And the best way to fight that is to show what you and my daughter and other people with Down syndrome can do and should do and would be better off doing if they had better medical care.
Absolutely. So just to conclude this, Frank, finally, if there's someone watching, if they're parents and they're expecting a baby with Down syndrome, what would you want to tell them?
I would tell them congratulations. And to expect happiness and success. And to learn to slow down and experience the joy.
That is beautiful, and I think a message that we can all take away from that. Michelle Sie Whitten and Frank Stevens, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine.
When we come back,
it brings people out of the snarkiness of Twitter or Facebook or social media and into, hey, we're actually talking to real people about real things that matter.
taking Humanae Vitae to the Twitter sphere. Hear about this unique initiative to highlight the beauty of the Church's teaching on life. Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. Thursday, July 26th marks the feast day for Saints Joachim and Saint Anne, the parents of the Virgin Mary. Tradition holds the couple struggled with infertility for years before conceiving and raising the immaculate and sinless woman who would give birth to Christ. Saints Joachim and Anne, pray for us. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I'm Catherine Hadro. The subject of this next story shocked me. I almost didn't believe it was real. For this week's Speak Out segment, we address a new abortion video game. While we cut out the more gruesome parts of the video, I should warn you, it's still disturbing to watch. Based on reporting by Crux, this is a video game from Argentina called Doom Feticcio, or Doom Baby Fetus, in which players must scramble to get an abortion-inducing drug by battling police, pro-life women, Catholic priests, and then ultimately killing an unborn child. In the game, when the player kills the little fetus, they get a message saying, "You defeated Feticcio. Give this misoprostol to those in need so they might defeat it too." Misoprostol is a medication used to induce abortion. It's difficult to watch those video game scenes. I cannot stomach how anyone would consider that game fun or entertaining. The developer reportedly created this grotesque game to mock the pro-life movement in Argentina. The baby is made to look like the photos of babies carried at pro-life rallies. Doom Feticcio, this game, comes as Argentina's Senate prepares to vote on whether or not to legalize abortion on demand until the 14th week of pregnancy, legislation that already passed the lower chamber. And as the campaigning continues, you can see the twisted, extreme agenda of abortion advocates on display in this game. I get it, it's not real life, it's a video game. But even pretending to kill a baby, to hurt a woman, a Catholic priest, or anyone for that matter, is evil. A mockery of life is a mockery of God, the author of life. It is no game. Though I suppose we shouldn't be surprised by this violence. It is called the culture of death, after all. But remember, there is always something you can do to counter today's culture of death. Follow this week's call to action. Go to prolifeweekly.com to submit your comment to the Department of Health and Human Services to show your support for the Protect Life rule. This week marks 50 years since the release of Humanae Vitae, the papal document that strongly affirms the Church's teaching on life. Half a century later, the text is more relevant than ever today. In this week's Pro-Life Focus, hear how one diocese is bringing the good news of Humanae Vitae to people in a new way.
I think it helps us to get out of the way we use social media to think about it as a classroom. We take the classroom a little bit more seriously.
Dr. Chad Pecknold is a professor of systematic theology at DC's Catholic University of America. But this week, he took Twitter to the classroom.
We are just learning how to use social media for the spread of the gospel. We're using a technology that is new to us.
July 25th marked 50 years since Pope Paul VI released his papal letter, Humanae Vitae, a document which strongly upheld the Church's teachings on openness to life and her condemnation of artificial contraception. The anniversary provided a major teaching opportunity, so the professor teamed up with Virginia's Diocese of Arlington to share his theology lessons with the online world. Wednesday night, social media users could directly ask Pecknold any of their Humanae Vitae questions by tweeting him and using the hashtag HV50 and hashtag AskTheQuestion.
Unfortunately, people aren't coming to church like they used to be. And I think that Twitter offers us this new platform to maybe to engage people at a different level.
Therese Bernpohl is executive director of the Office for Marriage, Family, and Respect Life at the Arlington Diocese. She's boots on the ground when it comes to problems facing families today.
People have turned away from God's plan for marriage. So undergirding Humanae Vitae is the fact that couples are saying no to God's plan. Everything we see right now, the lessening of the moral standards, the Me Too movement, men treating women poorly, objectifying women, the fact that we think that we can do whatever we want with our bodies when we have a Supreme Court that says you have a right to define your own existence. But here's the great news, is Humanae Vitae gives us a pathway back to wholeness.
Pecknold says today's problems means people will now be more open to Pope Paul VI's prophetic writings.
I think Humanae Vitae is more relevant now than it was 50 years ago. And many people did not truly enter into a dialogue with Paul VI's teaching. They came with dissent. Dissent doesn't ask questions. It already knows the answers that it wants. It wants contraception. It wants all these things. And now I think we see the bankruptcy of the sexual revolution. It pretended at sexual freedom. But Humanae Vitae really offers sexual freedom.
With the anniversary now behind us, the Humanae Vitae tweets and lessons still live on online at the Diocese of Arlington's website. The organizers behind this Humanae Vitae Twitter classroom hope people will learn the good news of life and love and that it hits home.
Paul VI has given us a blueprint for talking about the kind of sex which is properly ordered, that liberates us, that makes us pure.
Hopefully we can turn hearts back to want God again in the center of marriage.
That'll do it for this edition of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, but I'd love to hear from you before next week. So you can send me an email at prolifeweekly@ewtn.com or like my public page on Facebook so we can keep this pro-life conversation going. Remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.